So welcome for the course Unit 2 in the subject of CRIM 121, Theories of Crime and Causation. So the topic for this discussion is all about the concept and elements of theory, since this is the first and foremost formal discussion of our subject in CRIM 121. So let's go. So what are the topics to be discussed today is all about the theory, of course. So the definition, crime theories, key concept, and the different approaches when it comes to criminological theories. So let's start. So introduction. So think like this student. She is thinking about what? So if you were to find the answers of why some people commit crimes, where would you look for the answers? Oh, kanwari ikaw, kung tatanungin mo yung sarili mo kung bakit yung ibang tao nagko-commit ng crime, saan ka hahanap ng sagot mo? Saan ka magsisimula? Diba? Try to ask yourself, if you were to find the answers of why some people, not everyone, some people commit crimes, where would you look for the answers? So what are the answers to that type of question? Would you search for the events that might have influenced a criminal to commit crime? So, maghahanap ka ba? Diba? Would you search for the different things that might influence a human, the personality of a human, in order for them to what? To create or to commit crimes. So there are many approaches or theories in the explanation of crimes in order to come to answer to this question. So there are different approaches. So yung mga question nyo na yan na bakit ba magko-commit ng crime yung isang tao? Meron bang nag-impluwensya sa kanya? So tama yan dito sa ating subject na theories of crime and causation. Kasi nga, we're talking about the approaches or we're looking for the answer, the reason why people commit crimes. So, bakit yung theory is the best explanation of why, to answer those type of questions, diba? So, it's just like this. What is a theory ba? Do you have any idea? So, what is a theory? Big Bang Theory? So, what is a theory? When we say theory, what does it tell? So, a theory is any system of ideas and arranged in rational order that produce general principles which increase our understanding and explanation. So, in short, in theory, they provide us this what we call system or organized system wherein there are ideas arranged in rational orders or there are certain facts, diba, na nakaayos yan. So that produce general principles which increase our understanding and explanation. So it's just like facts. For example, I'll give you a scenario. For example, you're an investigator and you wanted to know how does the crime happen since there are no witnesses. What will be your basis? These are the facts that you needed. Diba? What are your basis in order for you to come up with the answer of how? Diba? Paano nila nagawa yun? Lalo na kung walang witnesses. So, dun tayo, yung mga pinagsama-sama nating facts about those circumstances na nakita mo while you are investigating. Those are the general principles that are na sinasabi nito. So, sabi nga niya, a theory is any system of ideas arranged, ibig sabihin, inayos, in a rational order. It means they are organized, that produce a general principles which increase our understanding explanation. So, going back to my example, diba, if you are going to investigate a crime, therefore, alamin mo yung pagkakasunod-sunod ng pangyayari. Or you will just assume, This is just only a presumption. It doesn't mean na kapag ganito ang investigation mo, since there is no witnesses, therefore you're just taking for assumptions or na baka ganito ang nangyari. And you will just organize it to answer the question of how. So, what is a theory pa ba? So, the function of theory is to provide puzzles for research. Yun nga. Yung theory mo na yun, based on your assumptions, so that will be your basis. Diba? If you create the basis of this theory, okay, baka nangyari yung crime na to sa gantong oras, ganto sila pumunta, ganto siya pinatay, tapos ganto siya iniwanan. Okay, it is a puzzle, diba? Bakit puzzle? Sabi niya, the function of theory is to provide puzzles for research. Why? Because those type of facts or those type of events na alam mo in creating a theory, hindi pa siya, tawag dito, ina-approve or tinetestify na totoo agad. I mean, those are just simply assumptions. Diba? Kasi nga, magke-create ka pa lang ng theory. So, in that, the general principles in theory are derived from and representative of particular facts, but those principles are not dependent upon the particular thing to be explained. So, balik tayo sa scenario. For example, there is a crime. Okay? There is no witnesses, walang nakakita. Ang nakita mo na lang dun sa victim, it is yung body niya na walang malay. Or sabihin natin patay na. There is a trace of a blood, and there is yung crime weapon niya is nakatapon dun sa ilog. So anong gagawin mo as you investigate since there is no witnesses? Ang gagawin mo, 'di ba? You will come up into establishing facts wherein sa tingin mo na ganito ang nangyari. Kasi nga, wala pa namang tao or wala pa namang makakapag-testify na ganun nga ang nangyari. Sabi nga niya, those principles are not dependent. Kasi nga, those facts na sinasabi mo or ina-assume mo should be what? Should be proven. Diba? So, in simple terms, theory is an explanation of something. Diba? Kailangan mo munang, kailangan mo muna siyang i-assumption. Parang, okay, baka ganito ang nangyari. That is your theory. And that theory, ang gagawin mo, while the entire investigation is happening, until you gather some confessions or testimonies, dun mo palang mapapatunayan na, okay, so tama ang aking theory. Okay, tama ang aking assumption kung paano or how na-commit yung crime. So, naiintindihan nyo na ba yan? What is theory? Diba? Theory, it is just like you created assumptions based on the facts that you have gathered. But in order for you, diba? But it doesn't mean that this theory na you gather those facts, it doesn't mean that lahat yun ay totoo. Ang gagawin mo na lang is patunayan. Yun ang trabaho ni theory. Si theory, hindi niya sinasabi na, okay, ganito ang dahilan. Okay, ito, totoo to. Sinasabi lang niya, it is simple terms, theory is an explanation of something, but needs to be proven. Okay po? So, that is a theory. So, these are the key concepts about theories. So, number 1, theories are useful tools that help us to understand and explain the world around us. Totoo naman yan, di ba? Without theory, sabi nga natin, without those assumptions, for example, paano nagsimula ang Earth? Di ba? Maraming assumption yan. Madaming magkakaroon ng theory until someone will approve it that the theory is that totoo siya. So, many things in the world na kailangan ng theories, lalo na yung mga hindi natin alam kung bakit sila nag-i-exist in this world. So, in criminology, they help us to understand the workings of the criminal justice system and the actors in the system. So, sa atin naman, ang work ng theory, tinutulungan natin ma-process yung tinatawag nating criminal justice system. Since criminal justice system has the 5 pillars sa atin sa Philippines. So, we have the law enforcement, we also have the prosecution, the court, correction, and the community. So, everything about crime. So, tinutulungan tayo ng mga theories. The causes, bakit nakakonect ang lahat. The connectivity of everything. So, the questions in our mind. That is why meron tayong mga theories to be proven. So, theories suggest the way things are, not the way things ought to be. Sinabi niya dyan na, sinasuggest niya na, or yung theories, these are the things, way things are, ibig sabihin, ganun sila ginawa. Okay? Hindi niya sinasabi na, dapat ganito sila ginawa. Magkaiba kasi yung, ganun talaga sila, kesa dun sa dapat. Kapag sinabing ganun talaga sila, that is a natural way. Pag sinabi natin, dapat, these are things ought to be, therefore, kailangan ganitong pag-ayos niya. If sinabi natin ought to be or ought to be, di ba? It means they need to be organized. Therefore, that's not theories. In theory, sabi nga natin, they just explaining the things we are or bakit. These are just assumptions. Di ba? Bakit may ganon? Sometimes they are not inherently good or bad. However, they can be used for good or bad purposes. So, not all theories are for good purposes. So, sabi nga lang, ang theories, it is just an explanation of everything. So, a theory can try to explain crime for a large social unit area, for a macro, or it can attempt to explain a crime at the individual or smaller unit level. So, ang theory, kaya niya explain. Basta every type of crime, kaya niya explain. Or lahat naman ng crime, kailangan may theory muna. Or meron muna assumption, why does, or how does a crime needs to happen or nangyari. So, another key concept, so because we are dealing with human behavior, diba? The social sciences will never be like the hard sciences. So, ano ba yung hard sciences? When we say hard sciences, these are any of the natural or physical sciences as chemistry, biology, physics, or astronomy in which aspects of the universe are investigated by means of hypotheses and experiments. For example, sabi niya, in the hard sciences, the theory of relativity will not change. Therefore, kasi kapag sinabi nating hard sciences, compact na yan, hindi na yan magbabago. Okay, yan na yan eh. Bakit tayo may gravity? Bakit may physical na ganito? Therefore, there's a specific explanation in that. Therefore, totoo na siya. Proven na siya. How about in crime? Diba? In crime ba, we're using hard sciences? No. In crime kasi, we're using the social sciences. So, what is the social sciences? However, we're just dealing with probabilities. Diba? Pag sinabi natin kasi social sciences, it is dynamic, paiba-iba. Diba? So, the social scientists will say things such as, severely neglected child will probably commit or tend to commit delinquent acts. Therefore, walang kasiguraduhan. Kasi nga, there are many possibilities na pwedeng mangyari dun sa isang bagay. Kapag sinabi natin social sciences, madami ang nag-i-influence dyan. Not unlike in hard sciences. Pag sinabing hard sciences, compact na yon, sure na ganun ang mangyayari. Pero kapag social sciences, there are things that that can influence a human, diba? Or that can influence a thing. Therefore, there are many probabilities, diba? Maraming pwedeng mangyari. We're not very sure of what will happen. Okay po, because of those influences. Next. So, another key concept. So, to be used for maximum effectiveness, theories must make sense or logical consistencies. Explain as much crime as possible. So, and be concise as possible or brief, diba? Most important, the theory must be true or correct. It should be valid. Yan, totoo, okay? Having met these basic goals, the theory must then have some real-world applications and policy implications. Sabi nga nung una, sabi niya, there are good theories and there are also bad theories. In order for us to come up with a good theory, so these are the factors, diba? Sabi niya, to be used for maximum effectiveness, theories must or dapat, diba? Number 1, make sense. Explain much crime as possible, concise or brief, and most importantly, it must be true or correct, or it must be valid. So therefore, we could count up in the good theories. So many theories have common traits, but differences among them still exist. So madami kasi tayong mga theories, lalo na sa crime theories, na parang, bakit pareho sila na explanation? But still, may pagkakaiba sila. So, understanding these differences is key to understanding the often contradictory views of crime and deviance they purport to explain. So, for example na lang, meron tayong homicide and meron tayong murder. Ang tanong, diba? Ma'am, they are just both act of killing another. Diba? Act of killing another person. Paano sila pinagkaiba? They're just look-alike. Pinatay nila, ma'am eh. Pero paano mo nasabi na yung isang crime is a homicide? Pero paano mo nasabi na yung isang crime, it is a murder? So, ganun sa theories din. There are theories na pareho silang ganun. Pero, there is still one factor that makes them differ. Nakakasunod ba kayo? Diba? Ganun ang theory. So, madami kasing theories. As we go on to this subject, you will witness or we will tackle the different theories. And some of you might get confused why do they alike. But still, there are still one factor that makes them differ. Next. So, what are crime theories? So, kanina pinag-uusapan natin, ano ba yung theory? Ngayon, let's go specifically, what are the crime theories? So, crime theories, why do we have that? So, to understand criminal justice. So, it is necessary to understand crime. So, policy making in criminal justice is based on criminological theory, whether the people making those policies know it or not. So, in fact, diba, most of the failed policies or what doesn't work, yung hindi talaga walang kwenta, in criminal justice are due to misinterpretation, partial implementation, or ignorance of criminological theory. Much time and much money could be saved if only policymakers had thorough understanding of criminological theory. Okay, we have this saying na there is no crime when there is no law punishing it. Or hindi natin masabi na merong crime unless meron munang batas. Na alin? Na magsasabi na yung isang act will constitute a crime. So, ang tanong, paano po ba sila gumagawa ng law in order for us to follow? Diba? Paano ba sila nag-create ng law? Diba mag-create sila ng law kapag there is something nakita nila na mali? There is something na kailangan sa tingin nila bigyan ng punishment. Okay, lahat yon, if they are making a law, kailangan may theories muna sila. And most of the surveys says na, di ba meron tayong mga policies na, or madami tayong laws and regulations na feeling natin, wala namang kwenta. Why? Or parang nonsense yung ginawa nilang batas or policy na yun. Why? Most of them, kaya sila nag-failed kasi hindi muna sila nag-i-start doon sa tinatawag nating theories. Diba? Most policy making in criminal justice is based on criminological theory. So, sabi nga dyan, in fact, most of the failed policies or yung what doesn't work are due to misinterpretation, diba? Partial implementation or ignorance of criminological theory. Diba? Bago ka kasi gumawa ng batas, kailangan alamin mo muna yung pinaka-theory mo. Bakit mo gagawin yung batas na yun? Diba? Therefore, if hindi mo i-base yung pag-create mo ng batas by just feeling mo lang ganito, therefore, nagsasayang ka ng pera, nagsasayang ka ng oras. 'Di ba? So, in order for us or for the policymakers, sino ba yung mga policymakers natin? Usually, those are the administrative or the ating mga legislative, yung ating mga senators, yung ating mga House of Representatives. One issue na nakita kong pwede dito sa crime theories, okay? Yung pag-create nila na alam niyo yung magsimula ng quarantine, bawal yung angkas, 'di ba? Tapos daw, para lang maging tama or okay ang pag-angkas, kailangan meron muna silang tinatawag na shield ba yun, yung nasa likod nila. Ang tanong, diba? Bakit kailangan pa ng shield na yun kung sa bahay magkasama naman sila? At saka, bakit pa kailangan ng shield na yun if, diba, yung dynamics, 'di ba, sa mga vehicles, merong dynamics kasi na kapag nahaharangan yung air, lalo na kung motor yan. Therefore, there is a big possibility na magkaroon sila ng accident. And also, 'di ba, naka-receive din tayo na pwede silang magangkas basta meron silang marriage certificate na ipapakita or mag-asawa sila or patunay na magkasama sila sa bahay. So, 'di ba, if meron naman na patunay na kailangan mag-asawa sila or kailangan patunayan na magkasama sila sa bahay, so what is the use of that barrier? 'Di ba? Therefore, yung barrier na yun, hindi naman nila gagamitin kapag natutulog sila. Or hindi naman nila gagamitin yun pag magkasama sila sa bahay. So, that is just my point. 'Di ba? So, anong nangyari? Parang pinapaalis din nila, 'di ba? Pinaalis din nila, binabawi nila yung barrier na yun. So, anong nangyari? Sayang yung time, sayang yung money. Why? Because creating that kind of policy is a failure. Diba? Why? So, most of the reason, hindi kasi nila tinignan muna or hindi sila nag-base na sila tawag nating criminological theory. So, that is a perfect example of why is it important to have theories in crime and also in policy making. Okay po. Next. So, a crime is a crime because the law says so. Balik lang tayo dun sa aking saying, sabi ko nga, there is no crime when there's no law punishing it. Kung walang magiging krimen unless merong batas na nagsabing krimen ang ginawa mo. Sure, sabi niya, there are concerns about over-criminalizations or too many laws. Of course, in the Philippines, it applies also. Ang dami nating batas, but ang tanong, kilala nyo ba lahat ng batas na yon? Lahat ba natutupad? And sometimes, in other countries naman, so, meron silang tinatawag na under-criminalizations or not enough laws. Kulang naman sa batas. But at least, on the surface, a legalistic approach seems practical. Diba? Kailangan talaga natin yung crime theories kasi, unang-una, babalik lang tayo sa pinaka-basic. Bago maging crime yan, kailangan meron nga munang batas. So, paano sila mag-create ng batas? Kailangan meron muna tayong tinatawag na criminological theory or the causes why do people commit crimes. Diba? It answers the question of why, it answers the questions of how. So, if dun tayo magbe-base ng ating mga theories, therefore, we could come up into a good law or policy that will make or will give an explanation to an act to constitute a crime. Okay po? So, criminological theories are primarily concerned with etiology. When we say etiology, these are the study of causes or reasons for crime. Pag sinasabi natin etiology, ito yung mga dahilan. It is the type of study. Always remember, if you encounter any word ending with logy, it means we're talking about a study. Okay po? So, but occasionally have important things to say about the actors in criminal justice system, such as the police, lawyers, correctional or jail officers, and the victims. So, sa crime theories natin, hindi lang siya mag-apply dun sa mismong why people commit crimes, but also yung ating pinaka-effect ng CGS, which is yung ating 5 pillars, the police, diba? Which is the law enforcement. We also have the lawyers, or just ating mga prosecutions, correctional institutions, also the jail officers and the victims. Okay. Sa crime kasi, okay, in order for us to prevent crime, okay, or in order for us to solve the crime, iikot talaga tayo sa tinatawag nating criminal justice system. Una, yung law enforcement, they need to catch the criminal. Next, magkakaroon tayo ng prosecution wherein the validation of the facts consists kung paano na-commit ang crime, whether it is true or not, whether there is a probable cause to commit it. Also, we have the court, diba? Para maglitis, para malaman if totoo nga. And we have these correctional officers or jail officers to correct that person who committed a crime. And also, we also have the community in order for us to accept those type of persons from the coming from the jail, or to accept those type of persons na they will serve their punishment within the community. Okay. Ganun ka-importante ang ating theories because it helps a lot with our CGS. So, the function of CGS kasi, it is in order for us to solve, not only to correct the crime, diba? Or to correct the criminal, or it is also to the prevention of the growing crime. Okay po? Ganun natin nakita ka-effective ang ating crime theories. Next. So, every criminological theory contains a set of assumptions. Sabi ko nga, kapag theory, it is just only an assumption of the facts that needs to be proven. So, in order for it to be a good theory, therefore, it must be valid, diba? It must be precisely, concise, diba? So, every criminological theory contains a set of assumptions about human nature, social structure, and the principles of causation, to name a few. So, a description of the phenomena to be explained, or the facts a theory must fit, an explanation or prediction of that phenomenon. So, tama. So, bago natin masabi na ang isang theory ay talagang karapat-dapat dun sa isang event. Therefore, yung mga facts na yun, kailangan talagang nagtutugma doon sa pangyayari. Parang kapag nag-i-investigate ka nga lang, siguraduhin mo yung facts na inaasam mo, yung facts na pinupresume mo, ganun nga ang lumalabas. Baka naman sinasabi mo, for example, nakita natin yung crime weapon nandun sa ilog. Pero sa mga facts mo, hindi naman yan kasama sa diba? Hindi naman yan kasama sa crime. How could you say so na hindi yan kasama sa crime if yun lang ang nakita mong crime weapon na merong traces ng dugo? So, in building a theory, yung mga facts doon, kailangan fitted siya doon sa isang scenario. Unless, baka ibang theory ang gusto mong pinapatunayan or ibang scenario ang gusto mong patunayan. Next. So, when judging among the various theories, we have to keep certain things in mind. Ano yon? Including predictive accuracy, scope, simplicity, and falsifiability. So, we must also remember that crime and criminality can be discussed at many levels. So, social, subcultural, family, or individual. And that a theory that may do a good job of predicting crime at one level may do a poor job at another level. So, there are many explanations kasi about crime. So, balik lang tayo dun sa kanina. We're dealing about with the social sciences wherein there are many probabilities that could happen. Okay? So, we should remember that dahil marami nga tayong theory, these are need to be proven. There are some theories na doon sa isa applicable siya, doon sa isang crime applicable siya. Pero kung ilalagay mo siya sa another crime, hindi siya applicable. Sabi nga niya, a theory may do a good job for predicting a crime at one level, but can also do a poor job at another level. So, yung mga theories natin about this about crime is dahil nga madami sila, we just need to choose one where it fits perfectly based on the facts it gives. 'Di ba? Other than that, baka ibang theory nga ang ating pinapatunayan or ibang facts. Okay po? So, next. So, approaches in crime causations or etiology. So, when we say approaches, it is a way of dealing with something. So, how do we deal with those different types of theories, especially in criminological theories? So, we have three. So, number one is subjective. Next thing is objective. And the last one is contemporary. So, ano po ang pinagkaiba ng subjective approach, objective approach, and contemporary approach? Pag sinabi natin subjective approach, ayan, kung nakita nyo sa picture, isang tao lang. Therefore, when say subjective approach, these are the theories that explains only with that person. Ibig sabihin, walang ibang dahilan kundi lang siya. The fault is already in that person. Subjective eh. Ibig sabihin, walang iba, kundi yung taong lang yun. When we say objective naman, ayan, we are talking about the factors that may influence a person to commit a crime. Nakita yung pinagkaiba? When we say subjective, we are just dealing with the wrongdoings or there is something wrong with that person. Sa kanya mismo nagsisimula. Pero pag sinabi nating objective, ito naman is walang mali dun sa taong yun. Pero nagiging mali lang because of the influence of the other factors surrounding him or her. Nag-gets niyo ba? And when we say contemporary, these are the new things or ito yung mga trends na kinakarap natin that we need to accept why people commit crimes because of this nowadays. So, we have three approaches in crime causation. We have subjective, objective, and contemporary. When you say subjective, it means applicable to that person. Therefore, the person is the problem itself. When you say objective naman, walang problema dun sa taong na yon, meron lang nag-influence or there's another factor affecting him to commit a crime. And lastly, for contemporary, these are the trends or the new things that we newly discovered about crime causation. So let's start. With subjective approach. As I said earlier, kapag sinabi natin subjective, ang problema dito yung mismong tao. Ibig sabihin, may kulang sa kanya, may mali sa kanya. Okay? So, it deals mainly on the biological explanation, diba, of crime. So, focus on the forms of abnormalities that exist in the individual. So, sabi ko nga, there is a problem. Merong mali dun sa tao na yun kung bakit siya magkukunar. Before, during, and after the commission of crime. So, ito yung subjective approach. So, we're going to tackle all the things na baka may mali dun sa taong yun, sa sarili niya mismo. Why he choose to commit a crime. Okay. These are the problems or abnormalities existing in that individual. So, number one approach in subjective approaches is what we call biological approach. Ano ba ang biological approach? The evaluation of genetic influences to criminal behavior. So, it is noted that heredity is one force pushing the criminal to crime. So, kasama to sa positivist school. So, a biological approach, there is a theory na sinasabi na namamana daw yung pagiging criminal. So, therefore, hindi yung nag-influence sa kanya. It is born. Diba? I am a born criminal. Parang ganun siya. Born criminal siya. So, kasi nga, namana niya. For example, ang nanay niya pokpok, therefore, pati siya din magiging pokpok. Or, ang tatay niya is babaero, therefore, pati rin siya magiging babaero. But hindi ko sinasabing most of us or lahat yun magiging ganun ang kalabasan. Okay? We're dealing with social sciences. There are many probabilities that may happen. Pwedeng yung isa, okay, kahit yung tatay niya babaero, pero hindi siya lumaking babaero. Meron yung isa na tatay niya babaero, pero pati siya naging babaero. So, nakita niyo pinagkaiba or nagigets niyo yung theory? Diba? When we say biological, going back, okay? When we say biological approach, these are the things that are born with it or namana niya within its genes. Genetic siya. Okay po. Therefore, yung pagkakamali niya, kaya siya ganun kasi ganun siyang pinanganak. Okay, next. Physiological approach. How about physiological approach? So, this is the study on the nature of human being concerning his physical needs. Okay? In order to satisfy his wants. Okay, when we say physiological, these are the things that human wants or human needs, diba? It explains that the deprivation of the physical body on the basic needs is an important determinant in the commission of crime or Maslow. Or, ito yung sinasabi ni Abraham Maslow. Diba meron tayong hierarchy of needs? And one of that is sex. Okay? So, physiological approach, we're talking about na merong mali dun sa taong yun. Bakit? Kasi, pwedeng may kulang sa kanya na hinahanap niya. So, in order for him to satisfy himself, diba? Para masatisfy niya yung kulang niya, yun ang mag-urge sa kanya kung bakit siya magko-commit ng crime. Kasi may kulang sa kanya eh. Hindi niya masatisfy yung gusto niya or hindi niya masatisfy yung sarili niya. So, that is a physiological approach. We're dealing with the human needs. So, therefore, sino may problema? Yung mismong tao. Hindi yun inimpluwensya ng ibang tao, sa kanya yun pagkukulang. Meron something sa kanya na kailangan niyang buuin. Or there is something that or parang dineprive sa kanya na kailangan niyang makuha. Okay? Pag sinabing biological approach, therefore ito ay namamana. When say physiological approach, these are the things that need or want ng isang tao to satisfy himself. Okay po? Kahit ang pinagkaiba ng biological and physiological. Next. Another subjective approach is what we call the anthropological approach. Ano ba po yung anthropological? Langgam po ba yan? Okay? Hindi po. Okay. Pag sinabi natin anthropological approach, we're dealing with the human body, the sizes of the body. So, the study on the physical characteristics of an individual offender with non-offenders in the attempt to discover differences covering criminal behavior by Ernest Houghton. Okay. In anthropological approach, okay, merong mga theories na sinasabi na your body types, okay? We have different body types, diba? Merong payat, merong sakto-sakto lang, diba? Or mediocre. Meron din yung mga taba. Meron din yung mga masculine, diba? Merong payat pero masculine. Merong, mataba pero malakas, diba? Ang anthropological approach, ina-explain niya na yung mga body types natin has something to do with in doing crimes. Like for example, kapag matatakal din natin to, kapag daw payat ka, tapos maliit ka pa, yung crime na pwede mong madalas na ginagawa mo is magnakaw ka. So, there is an explanation or theory with that. Kapag daw mataba ka, okay, baka may sa inyo may na-offend, okay? Pag sinabi na, pag mataba ka naman daw, kasi daw, yung mga to is, dahil nga tumataba sila, they are into frauds, parang panloloko. Okay. And yung mga mediocre naman, which is yung mga masculine, yung mga crime naman na ginagawa nila, yung madalas is murder, kanyan. So, yung anthropological approach, we're talking about or we're dealing about the physical characteristics or your body build has relation or has something to do in doing crime. Diba parang merong relasyon yung katawan mo sa pag-create ng crime or ano yung probably gagawin mong crime kung ganito ang katawan mo. So, kayo dyan, mag-isip-isip kayo. Diba? Mataba ka ba? Payat ka ba? Diba? Mediocre ka ba? So, anyway, there's a further explanation in that specific theory. So, this is just an introduction about the different theories in criminological approaches. So, bear with it. Next. Medical approach. Ano naman to? So, the application of medical examinations of the individual, criminal, explain mental and physical condition of the individual prior and after the commission of the crime. So, sometimes ito namang medical approach, ina-explain niya yung mga medical records, 'di ba? If you could remember, kapag yung baliw, 'di ba? Merong explanation bakit daw niya nagawa yung crime na yun. Kasi, excuse me, pwedeng in lucid interval niya or panahon na baliw siya. So, minsan, okay, may mga explanation bakit yung isang tao nakukommit niya yung crime yun. And in-explain nila by medical approach, it is because yung tao na yun may sakit, kaya nila nagagawa yung crime na yun. It's either mentally or physically. Okay po? Nakita nyo ni pinagkaiba? Baka nalilito kayo, balik tayo ha. Kapag biological, ibig sabihin namamana. Okay po? Pag sinabi natin physiological naman, ito yung mga bagay na kailangan or needs or wants na kailangan ma-satisfy ng isang tao, kaya siya nagka-create ng crime. Kapag sinabi naman nating anthropological, these are the body types, diba? The differences in physical characteristics. Taba ka ba? Payat ka ba? Mediocre ka ba? Pag sinabi naman nating medical approach, ito yung ina-explain niya na kung bakit kaya nila nakakommit ng crime, it is because may sakit sila. Okay po? Next. Psychological approach and psychiatric approach. Anong pinagkaiba ng dalawa? Psychological and psychiatric. Pareho lang po ba? So, siguro ang madalas sa inyo or pinagbabaliktad or iniisip na pareho lang naman ang psychological and psychiatric. So, magkaiba po. When we say psychological approach, it is concerned about the deprivation of psychological needs of man, which constitute the development of deviations of normal behavior resulting to unpleasant emotions. Ma'am, ano ba yung psychological approach? We're dealing with the human behavior. Kapag po yung feelings, empathy, or parang affection. Okay? These are the psychological approach. These are the human behavior. Okay po? Ibig sabihin, kulang or hindi na-develop yung emotions na yon or hindi niya nakukuha yung emotions na yon. That is why nagkakaroon ng abnormality in their behavior. Okay po? Next naman, psychiatric approach. Ito naman, the explanation of crime through diagnosis of mental diseases as a cause of criminal behavior. When say psychiatric approach naman, we're dealing with the theories wherein in-explain nila na may sakit sila sa utak. That is why nakakamit sila ng crime. Okay. Again, explanation. Pag sinabi natin psychological approach, therefore, kulang yung psychological needs of man or the anything that constitute or create the human behavior. Okay? Behavior tayo dyan. Kapag naman psychiatric approach, it means may sakit po sa utak yung isang tao kung bakit siya nakakakomit ng crime. Next. Another subjective approach is the psychoanalytical approach. Ano naman yung psychoanalytical approach? The explanation of crimes based on Freudian theory, which traces behavior as deviation of the repression of the basic drives. Okay. Kapag sinabi ng psychoanalytical approach, this is the id, ego, and super ego. Okay po? Id, ego, and super ego. So, parang napakan mo yung ego ko. Okay? Doon sa yung thinking ng isang tao. So, itong approach na to, parang has something or has resemblance with that psychological theory, diba? But this is naman psychoanalytical, therefore, sa pag-iisip niya or doon sa pagtanggap niya sa sarili niya. Kaya nga, we're dealing with ego, id, diba? Instinctual drives, ego, and the super ego. It means the repression of the basic drives. Okay po tayo? So, those are the subjective approaches. We have psychoanalytical, psychological, psychiatric, anthropological, medical, biological, and physiological. Okay. Again, when we say subjective approaches, these are the things that or abnormalities that exist in the individual. It means may problema na sa kanya po mismo. So next, let's go with ito na, objective approach. Sabi natin kanina, kapag naman objective approach, deals on the study of groups, diba? Social processes and institutions as influences to behavior. They are primarily derived from social sciences. Pag sinabi natin objective approaches, katulad ng picture kanina, there are certain factors. Ibig sabihin, walang problema dun sa tao na yun. But there are things, or there are some, siguro, other persons that may influence him or her to commit a crime. Sabi nga niya, we're dealing with the study of groups, social processes and institutions, or influences to behavior. So, number 1, we have the geographic approach. What is geographic approach? So, this approach considers topography, natural resources, geographical location, and climate lead an individual to commit a crime. Pag sinabi natin geographic approach, these are the things na affects a human to create a crime according to their location. Apo, according to their location. For example, nakatira sila sa malamig. Okay, dahil nakatira sila sa malamig, ano nga hanapin nila? Pampainit. Diba? Parang, kung ano yung kailangan nila doon sa place na yun, usually, yun yung makikreate nilang crime. Okay po? Sa geographic approach, these are the things or the factors that affects their location. For example, nakatira sila dun sa isang place wherein kahit puno, wala silang mapagtaniman or they don't have any other resources for them to eat, diba? So, therefore, anong gagawin nila? Pwede silang magnakaw sa ibang lugar. Ang tanong, may problema ba sa kanila? May problema ba sa pag-iisip nila or what? Or may problema sa sarili nila? Wala. Pero, anong nakaka-influence sa kanila? Bakit sila magko-commit ng crime? It is because of their place. Kasi wala silang magawa eh. Ganun ang pilis nila. Ibig sabihin, ang nag-influence sa kanila to commit a crime, it is the situation of their place. Okay po. Usually, kaya ganun, kailangan lang nilang gawin yon. Kasi no choice sila dahil ganun ang place nila. Kaya nga geographic approach. Next, ecological approach. It is concerned with the biotic grouping of men resulting to migration, competition, social discrimination, division of labor, and social conflict as factors of crime. Ito naman, kung ang geographic approach we are dealing with the location, with yung parang kung ano yung meron dun sa location nila, ano yung mga resources. Sa ecological approach, we're dealing naman dito doon sa mga taong nakakasalumuha nila sa lugar na yon. Okay. Sometimes there is a competition. Sometimes there are social discrimination, 'di ba? Division of labor, hindi pantay, and social conflict as factors of crime. Or pero there's hindi makatarungan. Nakita niyo ba yung pinagkaiba ng ecological and geographic? Pareho silang it tackles about location eh. But the difference is, when we say geographic approach, these are the things hindi sila tao. These are the natural things or resources nila kung saan sila nakatira. Pero kapag ecological approach, we're talking about the bunches of people they are involved with. Sino yung mga nakakasalamuha nila. So, therefore, sa ecological approach, those type of person or those type of conflicts around them, yun ang nagkakos sa kanila kung baka sila magko-commit ng crime. Another example, alam mo yung social discrimination, black versus whites, 'di ba? Parang bakit madalas sabi nila nagke-create ng or nagko-commit ng crime is yung mga black people. It is because they are experiencing racial discrimination within the white people. 'Di ba? Hindi problema yung Amerika, hindi kasi madami siyang resources. Ang problema yung mga tao. Naku ha, kapag geographic approach, ang problema doon, yung place nila. It's either mainit, it's either kulang na resources. Pag ecological approach, ang problema dito, yung mga kataong nakakasalamuha nila. So, maliwanag na po ba? If meron kayong mga questions, pwede namang i-route down nyo muna and then explain ko further within you. Next. Economic approach and socio-cultural approach. Anong pinagkaiba? So, when we say naman economic approach, it deals with the explanation of crime, diba? Concerning financial security of inadequacy and other necessities to support life as factors to criminality. Sa economic approach naman, ito na yung pera. So, these are the things that may influence a person, diba? Or may affect a person to commit a crime. For example, pag mahirap ka, or poverty, sabihin na natin. Because you're unable to acquire those basic necessities na kailangan mo to support your life. Therefore, madalas, yung mga mahirap ang nagko-commit ng crime. Why? Because they need to support their life. For example, they need to eat, they need to live, diba? They need shelter to live with. So, ang economic approach, in-explain niya, these are the things or the basic needs na kailangan ng isang tao. Ibig sabihin, yung pangangailangan ng isang tao na yon. Okay po? So, dahil kulang yon, inadequate yon, yun ang dahilan kung bakit nag-i-influence yun sa tao na yon na mag-commit ng crime. Parang sabihin na natin mahirap kayo, nagkasakit ang nanay mo, diba? Kahit naman matino ka, walang problema sa pag-iisip mo, alam mo ang tama at mali. Okay, pero dahil sa tawag ng pangangailangan na kailangan mong buhayin ang nanay mo, you need to support life, nagnakaw ka. Okay, di ba? Financial security kasi ito eh. So, kailangan mo ng pera. Nagnakaw ka. Di naman masama intention mo. Your intention is just to heal your mother because you need your mother. Di ba? Ganun yan. Yun yung mga nag-i-influence sa'yo kung bakit ka nagko-commit ng crime. That is economic approach. We're dealing with the money. We're dealing with the inadequacy of the basic necessity in order for us to support our life. Okay? Next, we have the socio-cultural approach. Ano naman to? Those that focus on institutions, economic, financial, education, and political and religious influences of crime. Pag naman socio-cultural approach, ito yung mga taong nakakasalamuha natin. Tapos, nai-influence nila tayo na gawin yung bagay na yon. Parang nakakalito yung socio-cultural approach doon sa sinasabi mong ecological approach. Okay. I will explain it to you. Sa ecological approach dito, hindi mo kasundo yung mga taong belong sa'yo. Or yung mga taong kasalamuha mo. Yun ang ecological approach. Kapag naman sinabi nating socio-cultural approach, ito yung mga tao na kasundo mo. You are within your group. Pero, okay po, dahil kasama mo nga sila yung nag-i-influence sa'yo to commit those type of crimes. Or sila kasi yung nagmumold ng isip mo. Sila yung mga nakakausap mo. Therefore, na-influence ka nila na ganito yung pag-iisip mo. Nakita yung pinagkaiba? Psychological, there is a conflict existing within the bunch of people you're surrounded with. Sa socio-cultural approach, wala kang conflict dito. But they influence you. They give some factors or they affect the way you think because sila yung nakakasama mo. Diba? Malaki ang pinagkaiba. Okay po. Next. Last one. Sige, before we go to the last one, again, pag sinabi nating objective approaches, these are the things that may affect or influence an individual. Therefore, walang mali ang individual na yun. Kaya lang siya nagiging mali kasi there is factors na nag-i-influence sa kanya. Okay po? So, objective approach, we have geographic, the location, ibig sabihin yung mga natural resources, ecological, the people they live with, there is a conflict. Okay? Hindi mo sila kasundo. Kapag naman sa economic approach, these are the basic necessities to support life or financial security. And socio-cultural approach, these are the things na kasundo mo naman, these are the people na kasundo mo naman and they influence you the way you think, the way you present yourself, and the way you see things. Okay, so those are the objective approaches. So last one is the contemporary approach. Again, when we say contemporary approach, these are the new things or new trends na kailangan natin i-accept. Okay. Modern days put emphasis on scientific modes of explaining crime, diba, and criminal behavior. So this approach is focused on the psychoanalytical, psychiatric, and sociological explanation of crime in an integrated theory. So an explanatory perspective that merges concepts drawn from different sources. So in modern days kasi, mas madami ng criminological theories ang nag-explain why crime exists. So, we need to focus on the different psychoanalytical, diba, psychiatric, and sociological explanations. And madami na yan nowadays. So, yung mga kanina kasi, subjective and objective approaches, those are just given na noon pa naman and napatunayan na. Dito naman sa contemporary approaches, these are the new things that needs of scientific modes in explaining crime and criminal behavior. So, madalas sa contemporary approaches, medyo challenging siya kasi nga bago siya sa pandinig. Pero at least, di ba, ito rin naman ang dahilan kung bakit we are growing on how to know or paano natin nalaman yung mga different types of crimes. So, ito yon, contemporary approaches, the new things or the modern days. So, that's it. That's the topic of our course unit 2. Before I end, I just need to say this a quote. Sabi nga niya, a theory can be proved by experiment, but no path leads from experiment to the birth of theory by Albert Einstein. It is just a quote wherein it summarizes the meaning of theory. Sabi nga niya, ang theory, mapapatunayan mo yan within the experiment. Pero, sabi niya nga, no path leads from experiment to the theory. Wala daw experiment to the birth of theory. Therefore, hindi siya pwedeng reciprocal. Kailangan, mauna lagi muna ang theory, tapos papatunayan mo by experiment. Hindi pwedeng mauna muna experiment bago theory. Para lang siyang sabi nga natin, ang theory, it is just an assumption, okay, based on the facts, okay, na nag-gather mo, and needs to be approved. And so, because we have many theories, dahil ganun ang kanyang lagay na, sabi nga niya, it is proved by experiment. Therefore, there is a good theory and also there's a bad theory, which simply explains that sometimes there are theories na applicable siya sa isang crime na nangyari. Or pwede siyang maging applicable dun sa isang crime. Pero kapag bibigay mo siya dun sa isang crime, hindi siya magiging applicable. At tulad nga na sinabi ko, sabihin natin pareho silang pinanganak na tatay nila ay babaero. Pero, yung isa, bakit hindi niya namana? Pero yung isa namana niya. 'Di ba? Pero merong theory na in-explain niya na kung 'di ba doon sa biological approach na pag daw ang tatay mo or yung isang magulang mo is ganito, mamamana mo. Bakit sa kanya hindi gumana? Bakit sa kanya gumana? Okay? So again, a theory can be proved by experiment. But no path leads from experiment to the birth of theory. Hindi siya pwedeng i-reciprocate. Dapat kailangan una muna ang theory. Okay po? So if you have any questions about this topic, therefore, please write it and we can tackle this in our Google Meet discussion. So I hope you learn and I'm looking forward na magagawa niyo yung mga assessment and quizzes ko. So that's it for today and see you in the Google Meet.